The build-up to rugby's greatest rivalry has taken another intriguing turn, with Dave Rennie responding to the growing debate over the speed of the game and accusations that the Springboks could attempt to slow proceedings down when the All Blacks arrive in South Africa. With the first test at Ellis Park approaching, the conversation is no longer just about tactics, selection, or physicality. It is also about tempo, momentum, and how both teams want the match to be played. Rennie has made it clear that the All Blacks intend to play with ambition. Since taking charge of New Zealand, he has placed a strong emphasis on attacking rugby, quick transitions, and keeping the ball moving. That approach has already produced encouraging results, and the upcoming series against the world champions will provide perhaps the biggest test yet of whether New Zealand can maintain that identity under extreme pressure. On the other side, Rassie Erasmus has strongly rejected suggestions that South Africa are deliberately trying to slow the game down. And rather than answering the accusations alone, Erasmus brought in former Test referee and SA rugby law advisor Jaco Peyper to explain the technical side of the issue. That decision immediately added another layer to the debate. The message from the Springboks camp was straightforward. According to Erasmus and Peyper, South Africa have not received negative feedback from World Rugby suggesting that their approach is outside the expectations of the modern game. But Rennie's response showed that the All Blacks coach is not completely convinced by the discussion. Asked whether he expected the opening test to be affected by a contrast in styles, Rennie admitted that he was unsure what Peyper was referring to. He pointed to New Zealand's recent experiences against South African club sides, explaining that some matches had been noticeably slow, with one line-out against the Sharks taking around 50 seconds to form. That example is important because it highlights what Rennie appears to be concerned about. The All Blacks want the game to have rhythm. They want quick ball. They want defenders forced to make decisions before they can reset. They want their backs to attack space. And they want pressure to build through repeated phases rather than allowing the opposition to constantly interrupt that momentum. South Africa, meanwhile, are famous for their ability to control matches through territory, set-piece pressure, kicking, physical defense, and tactical discipline. That does not automatically mean time wasting. It does mean that the Springboks are exceptionally comfortable managing the tempo of a match. And that is where this debate becomes so fascinating. A rugby match is not simply played at one speed. Teams constantly change the rhythm depending on the score, field position, fatigue, weather, referee decisions, and tactical objectives. A team protecting a lead may naturally take longer over certain restarts. A team chasing the game may want everything happening immediately. A dominant side may deliberately slow the match after winning a penalty. A team under pressure may want to speed things up. The referee has an important role in deciding where legitimate game management ends and unacceptable delay begins. That is why Peyper's explanation matters. The former referee suggested that the relationship between coaches and officials is built around an understanding of how the laws should be applied. He referred to the shape of the game discussions involving coaches and referees, where major issues are discussed and areas of focus are established. In other words, the argument is not simply about one team versus another. It is about how the sport itself wants the modern game to look. That distinction is important for the All Blacks because Rennie does not appear to be complaining simply because South Africa play differently. Instead, his comments suggest that New Zealand want clarity. If the officials are happy with the pace of the game, then the All Blacks have to adapt. If delays cross the line into unfair time management, then the referee has to intervene. And if both teams are allowed to play within the laws, then the result will ultimately come down to which side handles the tactical battle better. That is precisely why the Ellis Park test is so compelling. The rivalry between New Zealand and South Africa has always been about more than individual players. It is a clash of rugby cultures. The All Blacks have traditionally represented speed, skill, improvisation, and attacking ambition. The Springboks have built an extraordinary reputation around physical dominance, tactical intelligence, set-piece strength, and ruthless efficiency. But modern rugby has made both teams more flexible. South Africa can attack. New Zealand can be physical. The Springboks can play at pace when they want to. The All Blacks can slow a game down when circumstances demand it. The difference may come from which team controls the terms of engagement. That is why Rennie's comments about the Bulls are particularly interesting. He noted that the Bulls had a much more positive mindset, with more ball in play. That suggests he has already seen evidence that South African teams are capable of playing the kind of high-tempo rugby New Zealand wants to face. And perhaps that is why he expects the Springboks to approach the test in a similar way. There is another important factor here. South Africa know exactly what the All Blacks are trying to do. They know that Rennie wants his team to play expansively. They know that quick ball is dangerous. They know that if New Zealand are allowed to attack broken field situations repeatedly, their playmakers can create problems. So the Springboks will almost certainly look for ways to deny that rhythm. But denying rhythm is not necessarily the same as wasting time. It can mean winning collisions. It can mean forcing the All Blacks backwards. It can mean kicking intelligently. It can mean slowing the ball legally at the breakdown. It can mean dominating the set piece. It can mean forcing New Zealand to make multiple defensive decisions before they ever get into attacking positions. That is rugby. And that is exactly why the role of the referee will be so important. English official Matthew Carley has been appointed to referee the opening test at Ellis Park. Both teams will have to understand his interpretation from the opening whistle. For the All Blacks, that means adjusting to what the referee allows. For the Springboks, it means ensuring that their tactical control remains firmly within the laws. Neither side can afford to spend the match arguing with the official. The team that adapts fastest could gain a significant advantage. That is especially true in a rivalry where emotions can rise quickly. The first few minutes could establish the tone. If the referee demands fast restarts, quick lineouts, and immediate movement, both teams will need to respond. If he allows greater time for certain phases, both teams will have to accept that reality. And if penalties begin to arrive for repeated delays, discipline will become a major storyline. This is where Rennie will be hoping his team remains focused. The All Blacks cannot allow the debate about time wasting to become a distraction. They cannot enter Ellis Park looking for excuses. They have to play. They have to make decisions. They have to execute. And above all, they have to cope with South Africa's physical intensity. Because regardless of how fast the game becomes, there is one unavoidable truth about playing the Springboks in Johannesburg. The collision battle will be enormous. Every carry will matter. Every defensive tackle will matter. Every scrum will matter. Every lineout will matter. Every kick chase will matter. The All Blacks may want to increase the tempo, but South Africa will attempt to make every phase physically demanding. That is where the series could be decided. If New Zealand can create quick ball after contact, they can force the Springboks to defend repeatedly. If South Africa can win the gain line and slow the All Blacks' momentum, the entire match could take on a different shape. The opening test could therefore become a battle between speed and control. And that is what makes the comments from Rennie, Erasmus, and Peyper so significant. They have exposed the tactical conversation underneath the rivalry. The public sees two great teams preparing to face each other. The coaches see something more complicated. They see a contest over space, tempo, possession, territory, and decision-making. The Springboks know that rugby is not simply about having the ball. It is about deciding what happens when you do not have it. The All Blacks know that speed is not simply about running faster. It is about making the next decision before the defense is ready. Those principles will collide at Ellis Park. For Rennie, the challenge is to ensure that his players do not become obsessed with how South Africa choose to play. They need to control what they can control. That means their own discipline, their own support lines, their own ruck speed, their own accuracy, their own kicking game, their own defensive organization. If they do those things well, they can make the game uncomfortable for South Africa. But if they become frustrated by perceived delays, they could lose concentration. That would be exactly what the Springboks want. South Africa are masters at turning pressure into mistakes. A frustrated opponent is often easier to defeat than a confident opponent. So even if Rennie believes the game could be slower than he wants, his players must remain patient. They must trust their system. They must trust the referee. And they must trust their preparation. There is also a psychological element to this entire discussion. Whenever one team publicly raises an issue before a major match, the opposing camp can use that conversation as motivation. South Africa will not want to be portrayed as a team that needs to slow the game unfairly. New Zealand will not want to be portrayed as a team searching for excuses. That creates an interesting situation.